leave the meeting for the purposes of confirming quorum. Council members are reminded that in accordance with section 14.13 of the procedure bylaw, members must enable their video to confirm quorum. If a council member attending by electronic means loses their connection during any portion of the hearing, we will recess the meeting until the connection is restored. And if a council member loses connection during the voting process, staff will get you back online quickly while we suspend the voting process. And you should have their contact information. Members of the public can view the proceedings via the live stream and on YouTube, which will be posted on X at Van City Clerk. I'd like to acknowledge that we are on the unceded homelands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. We thank them for having cared for this land and look forward to working with them in partnership as we continue to build this great city together. In case of an emergency, if we need to evacuate the building, I'd like to direct your attention to the exits. There are 2 exits beyond the glass doors and to the left. If these exits are obstructed, please direct your attention to the 4 exits in the chamber. And please use the stairs and not the elevator. I'd also like to highlight that there is a defibrillator located at the end of the hallway outside of the council chamber. And I'd also like to take a moment to recognize the immense contributions of the City of Vancouver's staff who work hard every day to help make our city an incredible place to live, work, and play. Clerk, may we have the roll call, please?
Mayor Sim is on a leave of absence for personal reasons from 6 till 10 p.m. Councillor Carr is having technical issues and will be joining shortly. Councillor Kirby-Young. Councillor Dominato. Councillor Bly is on a leave of absence from 6 to 7 p.m. for civic business. Councillor Boyle.
Present. And I think Councillor Carr is present.
Yes.
Yes.
Everything, so you should be able to talk as well.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Yes, I've marked you down, Councillor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Fry. Councillor Montague.
Present.
Councillor Klassen.
Present.
Councillor Meisner, or in the chair, and Councillor Joe.
Present.
You have quorum, acting Mayor Meisner.
Okay.
Thanks very much, Leslie. Before we begin, I have some announcements. The public may participate by speaking in person, by phone, or by submitting written comments to Mayor and Council. Speakers will have 5 minutes to make their comments and should limit their comments to the merits of the report being considered. Speakers should also state whether they are in support or opposed to the recommendations and if they are a resident of Vancouver. Speakers may only speak once and should follow along on X at Van City Clerk for updates on the progress of the meeting so they don't miss their turn to speak. Any comments on agenda items can be submitted in writing through our online form at the Mayor and Council Public Hearing Feedback website. This link will also be shared on X. Those speaking on behalf of 4 or more persons or groups, including the speaker, will have 8 minutes to speak, and only if those represented are also on the line or in person. Those who are represented by a speaker must not be individual speakers themselves, meaning that those represented should confirm that they're on the line or in the chamber. I'd also like to note the City of Vancouver's longstanding commitment to equity, diversity, and inclusion, including the utmost respect for all genders. I'd like to remind Council that when addressing speakers and staff, we will avoid using gendered honorifics and will instead refer to the person by first and last name, role, or title. A reminder that Council's role at a public hearing is to be a quasi-judicial body, which means Council is only to consider the merits of the rezoning application or heritage designation. Council members may ask clarifying questions from speakers, including the applicant, or technical advice from staff, but should save debate for after the close of the speakers list. So after hearing from speakers, Council may do one of 3 things: approve the application in principle, refuse the application, or refer the application to staff for further consideration. And finally, if Council does not conclude the public hearing and hear from all speakers this evening, we will recess and reconvene the meeting on Tuesday, March 5th at 3 p.m. So our first item is tools and incentives to encourage mass timber construction. Does any member of Council wish to declare a conflict of interest on item 1? Okay, I'm not seeing any conflicts. So the clerk will now read the application and the summary of correspondence received.
This is an application by the General Manager of Planning, Urban Design and Sustainability to amend Section 10 of the Zoning and Development Bylaw and to propose a rezoning policy to accelerate mass timber construction in new buildings taller than 6 stories. The changes seek to increase height and density for mass timber and rezoning applications and to provide extra height in district schedule areas. The following correspondence has been received since referral to public hearing, one piece of correspondence in support, and that represents all correspondence received up to 5 p.m. today.
Okay, thanks very much. So this is the first call for speakers. Any speakers for this item who wish to speak to council, please call toll free at 1-833-353-8610, followed by participant code 1061445#, before the close of the speakers list. This phone number will also be posted on X and made available on the live stream. There will be an opportunity for new speakers and missed speakers to be added at the end of the registered speakers list. Since there are registered speakers for this item, I suggest that we hear the staff presentation. We have staff from Planning, Urban Design and Sustainability here to present the application.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Patrick Enright. I'm the team lead for the small existing new developments team in Sustainability Division of Planning, Urban Design and Sustainability, and I'll be presenting on the report Tools and Incentives to Encourage Mass Timber Construction. Let's make this full screen. Perfect. All right. With me today are Doug Smith, General Manager of Planning, Urban Design and Sustainability, Sean Pander, the Manager of Green and Resilient Buildings Branch, Shailen Black, a Senior Development Planner in our branch, Andrea Wickham, a Senior Green Building Planner. We also have joining us tonight Derek Newby, a Managing Director and Principal at Perkins & Will Canada. Derek worked with us to better understand the economic and practical implications and benefits of the proposed changes, and will also be able to available to answer questions. Staff would also like to take this opportunity to thank Derek for his professional and personal dedication to supporting this work, as well as other efforts over the years to support mass timber construction in Vancouver. In this presentation, I will share some background on this report, the thinking that went into it, and overview 3 recommended incentives to encourage mass timber construction. This report responds to a council motion to report back on incentives to advance mass timber in construction, including consideration of relaxing zoning requirements and increases in density. Mass timber is made of smaller pieces of lumber laminated together to form engineered structural components for floors, walls, columns, and beams, as seen in this rendering of the T3 office building on East 6th Avenue in Vancouver. The proposed policy will use the definition in the zoning bylaw, which defines mass timber as a building where a majority of structural members are made of wood with minimum dimensions corresponding to mass timber. This definition allows for hybrid mass timber buildings, which often include concrete cores, steel posts, and beams. Mass timber construction can have multiple benefits for residents, the economy, and the environment. It can significantly reduce embodied carbon, which are the emissions associated with building materials, compared to traditional materials like steel and concrete. Energy efficiency can also be improved, as wood is a relatively good insulator. And because mass timber is typically produced off-site and is lighter than other materials, it can reduce the noise, dust, and traffic of traditional construction, while also easing some of the pressures of industry labor shortages. But because mass timber construction is newer and far less common than other conventional methods, it can come with cost premiums and design challenges that may deter some builders. Over time, innovative examples and wider adoption have the potential to reduce these costs by solving challenges and scaling up supply chains and local expertise. In Vancouver, we've seen 8 tall mass timber projects receive development permits in the last 5 years, with several more not far behind in the approvals process. There remain, however, real and perceived costs and risks compared to conventional construction. To create a lasting shift toward mass timber construction, incentives could be very helpful to increase adoption and normalize this way of building. We have seen incentives and policy changes be effective in achieving city goals, such as with purpose-built rental and with passive house construction, where incentives have helped innovative builders and leading builders to overcome initial higher costs and build the first projects that can dispel myths, drive innovation, and pave the way for wider adoption. In developing the recommended policy, we consulted with fellow staff across multiple divisions and departments, and we heard from our colleagues that a strong desire to keep it simple and ideally outright wherever possible, to make it citywide, and to avoid process impacts and impacts to approvals. We also consulted with industry through a series of meetings and information sessions, bringing together local leaders in mass timber construction. What we heard from industry was that early advice is extremely valuable to allow developers and design teams to make decisions early on that will make it easier and more economical to build in mass timber and receive timely approvals. And also that density is a key incentive that can help mitigate increased costs from building in a new way. In addition, city staff have worked with the province on their proposed code changes to allow 18-story mass timber buildings outright in the BC Building Code. And city staff are already facilitating taller mass timber buildings in Vancouver using the code's alternative solutions process. Staff had several design goals in creating the new incentive policy for mass timber construction. The amount of incentive was ideally worthwhile to those that are trying to build mass timber. We wanted to make it worth their while to undertake this construction and to follow this policy, but also needed to be simple and compatible with planning regulations and permit processes. We also wanted to create an incentive in a timely manner that would be available to applicants relatively quickly. So for the incentives proposed here, we favored incentives that could be developed and applied relatively quickly, as opposed to incentives that may require new processes, staff positions, or changes to various other requirements, policies, or bylaws. I'll now provide an overview of each of the 3 recommended incentives in this report. The first incentive is a rezoning policy. It provides additional stories and commensurate density for mass timber construction. The number of additional stories is predefined to simplify administration. The rezoning policy, if adopted, applies where plans enable 8 stories or more, or community plans enable 8 stories or more, and would allow the Director of Planning to recommend an additional 2 stories with commensurate density in areas that permit up to 11 story buildings, and up to 3 stories in areas, 3 additional stories in areas that permit 12 stories or more. For example, in the Granville-Burrard Slopes area of the Broadway Plan, which currently envisions 10 stories for secured market and below market rental, the Director of Planning could recommend an additional 2 stories in a rezoning. In other areas which currently envision 12 stories or more, the Director of Planning could recommend an additional 3 stories in a rezoning. The rezoning plan policy also includes limits in order to maintain flexibility and to avoid conflict with other civic outcomes, such as sunlight on parks and heritage retention. The policy also carefully considers how it works together with other city incentives and policies, where the incentive policy for below market rental, where the incentive policy for below market housing applies, these can be combined. In areas where the below market housing incentives or considerations are baked into area plans, this policy simply increases what is already prioritized and envisioned in those area plans. Finally, this incentive is meant to be time limited. As mass timber construction becomes more widely adopted, it is expected the policy may no longer be needed, So staff will monitor implementation and report back after 2 years if needed with further recommendations. The second recommended incentive is for applications under existing zoning, also known as district schedules. Unlike with incentive number 1, this incentive doesn't come with density. It only refers to height, but this can be applied to any application under a district schedule, so a non-CD1 rezoning, or sorry, a non-CD1 application. This incentive builds on existing height variances and increases for mass timber that are already in the zoning and development bylaw, providing greater design flexibility and potentially higher ceiling heights for mass timber. It also makes this height increase outright rather than conditional, meaning if you're building out of mass timber, you get the height increase without requiring applicants to justify that height in plans and submissions, or for those to be reviewed by staff. Height alone can make it easier to build with mass timber, as mass timber floor assemblies are thicker typically than concrete. And finally, incentive number 3, third recommended incentive is for staff to provide a pre-application meeting with representatives from city groups that are critical to development and building approvals. That includes the Chief Building Official's Office, development planning, and project facilitation. Early advice on the supportability of certain aspects of a proposed mass timber structure, such as floor plate sizes or code solutions, were identified as a key step by designers and builders to enable the effective planning and supply of mass timber buildings. In terms of next steps, if the recommendations are approved, staff will work to ensure effective implementation as well as monitoring, as mentioned, and to continue parallel work on permitting processes and the building bylaw to make it easier to build with mass timber. And with that, we'd be happy to take any questions.
Great. Thank you very much for the presentation. You do have quite a few questions. So Councillor Fry, we'll start with you.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Patrick. Appreciate the presentation. I had to conflict out on the last mass timber project because my wife works for Acton Osprey, who were consulting on that. But like a nerd, I did actually watch the entire hearing procedure. And because it's quite interesting to me, but with that conversation came the piece around the balconies. And so I'm looking at the policy document here in 3.2 around additional considerations and discretion. And do we have, is there any policy direction around discretion on things like balconies, ventilation, energy performance, or anything else that might be very specific to mass timber construction that we wouldn't see in, say, concrete construction?
So I just want to address, to answer that, I don't think there's any current discretion around balconies. My understanding is that planning colleagues are looking at public space and doing a review of outdoor public space. Shylin, do you want to add anything to that or no? Yeah, please. Shylin Black actually can speak to the details of the policy more specifically.
Thank you.
Thanks, Patrick, and thanks for the question. So the policy as written and before you does not mention balconies. It is neutral on them. We expect the Director of Planning would exert his or her discretion in evaluating questions around balconies or not balconies, as he or she normally does with applications. We do, however, offer discretion in this policy when it comes to varying some of the dimensional limits that are in planning policies. So if, for example, we hear from mass timber designers that a certain module or width is preferred, and that is slightly different than existing planning policies, the Director of Planning does have the written discretion here to vary those aspects. But on balconies, we are silent in this policy.
Okay. Do we imagine that as far as discretion on dimensions, that for energy performance, we need thicker or thinner walls relative to concrete construction or anything like that that would influence, say, the FSR?
Well, in the context of a rezoning, obviously all of those FSR limits are set custom to the building in question. So presumably the CD1 bylaw would be written to accommodate the insulation or the other features of the building.
Okay. I'll table that. I do think that obviously the balcony discretion piece, for instance, and how that works with mass timber and water egress and ingress and that kind of thing is a factor, and certainly not something that needs to be debated at a rezoning and amended on the fly, with respect to my councillor colleague, Kirby Young, who did that. So I would have liked to see some more policy direction around that, but that's, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor. Councillor Klassen.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation, staff. I think a few of us in this meeting tonight are sharing some of the nerd-like enthusiasm for the growth of mass timber, which sort of brings me to my first question. I know that we like to tout the environmental benefits, the embodied carbon, and what have you, but what are some of the other sort of obvious benefits? And I'm trying to do get a better understanding of the relative costs of mass timber at this time in its kind of early days, as opposed to other types of construction featuring concrete, and the efforts that we might go to promote this as a local industry.
Yeah, so I'm going to take a quick stab at that, and then I can also ask Derek Newby to answer that. Basically, there's a number of benefits, especially around faster construction, and as we mentioned, there's less dust, less disruption to neighborhoods and communities, reduced traffic, things like that, as well as potential regional economic benefits as we develop a more regional supply chain and local expertise to build out of local materials. Derek, if you'd like to touch on that further, please.
Thank you. I'm Derek Newby, architect, AIBC. Our study has revealed that there is a small cost premium that we would expect to be associated with the mass timber building compared to conventional construction. That cost premium can be counteracted to some degree with speed benefits and with a disciplined approach to the design of the building. So while there is a cost premium we see right now, we do think over time that does become neutralized. As far as the technical merits of mass timber buildings are concerned, of course there is a carbon benefit. There's a benefit to the local economy and the forest industry that we have in our province. There's the benefits that Patrick had identified around speed and noise of construction and waste. So it's a different way of building, and many people, many projects that we have underway right now see those benefits and take advantage of it.
Well, I have you there at the podium. What are your sort of projections for a potential adoption of mass timber going forward? Are we going to see a boom in this type of construction?
I would like to say that everything is in place for mass timber construction to become more widespread. We have a mature forest industry in BC. We have engineering and design expertise that can take advantage of this. I think some of the policy recommendations that are included in this piece of work help incentivize or level the playing field so that as a construction method, it's on more equal terms with conventional work. So I think the carbon benefits, the benefits to the local economy are significant to the point that we will see more and more. I think it's just a fact that we're seeing. We have to be more conscious of the carbon implications of what we build with, and this is one way to do it.
And we're hearing from lots of industry representation on this, in addition to the architecture sector, who are probably learning more about how we can use these building forms.
I'm sorry, was that a question?
Yeah, it was quite a big. Yeah, it was posed as a question. Are we hearing from a lot more industry players who are interested in pushing this building form, the mass timber?
Yeah, of course. I think there's a lot of support from the province in particular, and players in construction as well as the forest industry naturally. I think we see that there being a nice synergy between mass timber construction and prefabrication. Mass timber buildings tend to be prefabricated buildings. That's a shift in the building industry that we're seeing, where more things are being built in factories and less things out in the rain, like you see on days like today. So I think the industry is interested in mass timber as a way of streamlining construction, and there is interest across the industry.
So just about 30 seconds here. I know that we are bound slightly by provincial guidelines. I know that we would never build an unsafe building, but what is the record of this type of construction with regards to seismic stability?
Right, so I'm not a professional engineer, but I am an architect. I can comment in that capacity. Timber buildings are lighter buildings. Lighter buildings mean lesser loads. Lesser loads mean less reactions in seismic events. So timber also has the benefit of being naturally ductile and flexible in seismic events. So we see seismic design in timber buildings as being an advantage, and they behave very differently than concrete buildings. I
Sorry,
would say
we're
that
at
our
time.
industry is very safe with building.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dominato.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for the presentation. Just a couple of quick questions. One with respect to the incentives you've outlined, obviously lots of engagement with industry. Could you expand on, outside of the incentives that are presented today, what did you hear in terms of maybe potential opportunities in the future and also challenges or barriers?
Yes. So even beyond this, I think one topic that was of great interest was balconies. And so that's something that we could look to in the future as in conjunction with other work taken throughout the department of how can we facilitate kind of win-win solutions that work best and most economically with sustainable construction, private outdoor space, whether that means, and even underneath this policy, there could be ways that even inset balconies with different floor plate sizes could work quite well. That's one area I would mention. Other incentives, areas of incentive, I would say, I think the whole area of prefabricated offsite construction, there's a lot of excitement about how to build faster and sustainable and build more housing altogether. So we would look to do any further work, and hearing a lot of excitement in that area as well.
Okay. And any barriers specific to Vancouver that were identified?
I don't remember recalling any other Vancouver-specific barriers. There's been, in the similar vein of offsite prefabricated construction, there's been a lot of work done by SFU Renewable Cities in the province in terms of how to line up zoning and codes with faster and affordable sustainable construction. So some of the ideas that they put into that package actually came from our first moves to encourage mass timber construction in code and in zoning, such as the height variances that we already have. So they took some of that and brought that out to the package that was shared with the province. There are other ideas and potentially things in there that we could look to include, whether it's processes or other things, but we did our best in this round to pull in any of those best ideas from across the province and include them in this package.
Great. Just two more questions. One with respect to, you referenced the BC Building Code change to 18 stories, and is that outright? Is that an outright provision within the BC Building Code?
It is an acceptable solution. So it's under final round of public review right now with the province, and that would be, yes, an acceptable solution at 18 stories for encapsulated mass timber construction.
Okay, and if that's supported, approved, we would look to adopting that in the Vancouver Building Code. Is that correct?
Exactly, yeah.
That's
So
later in the year.
We've participated in the joint task group that the province assembled with other provinces, and as well as some of our code officials. And so once we see the result of that process, we will explore how to quickly, what the earliest opportunity is for us to bring that into the Vancouver building bylaw. There may be a couple different options, but some faster than others. But we'll do our best to bring that forward in a timely manner.
Fantastic. And then last question, just in the context of the forestry supply chain represents for Vancouver, it's like $1 billion, just under $1 billion. Is there any way to sort of enable, incent dealing with local businesses in BC who are working in this space? I recognize with sort of free trade agreements we can't limit, but is there any thought to how we can support local businesses who are working in this space?
That's a great question. I don't have any immediate things I can point to. I know that we have been exploring ways that we can either encourage or require sustainably or locally sourced wood. Again, you're right, we have to be careful in not overly limiting supply chains and what options are available to developers so they can choose the most cost-effective options. But there are a number of different ways that we may be able to encourage that, and we'll see if we can bring that in as part of, incorporate that into our future work.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Dominato. Councillor Joe.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, staff, for the presentation. So exciting to see this policy. So question for the incentive one. So I realize it has to be at least 8 stories. So I wonder, what about the areas with limitation under 8 stories, like Canby Corridor, where we only allow 6 stories? So that means the mass timber, there's no incentive for those projects on Canby Corridor?
So this, yes, you're correct, and this only applies to areas and community plans that already enable buildings 8 stories or more. That's for 2 reasons, I would say. One, mass timber is the most benefits for mass timber apply when you're comparing to, say, concrete construction, which is the standard form of construction over at 8 stories and above. Up to 6 stories, you can already build out of light frame wood timber, which is typically the most cost-effective and the most sustainable in a way. So we wanted to focus on the 8 stories and above.
Okay, so there's no incentive for someone who want to build mass timber on 6 stories and give them another 2 stories, so make that 8 stories.
You're correct.
On Canby Corridor,
You're correct.
yeah.
They, of course, could always are welcome to build from mass timber, but there's no, this policy would not apply to that.
Okay, thank you. Second question regarding the definition of mass timber. So we are still using 50% of all the material?
Yes, that's correct. So it's a majority, 50% majority of structural materials. That's the intent is to keep it simple, allow hybrid constructions, which are quite common, but the vast majority, typically the largest majority of material in a building, structural material, is in the floor plates.
Okay.
And so, yeah.
So is this 50% international standard or the City of Vancouver standard?
This is our definition of mass timber construction for the purposes of administering the zoning and development bylaw.
Okay, do we know how other city, define the mass timber project?
The only other definitions that we're aware of relate, strict definitions that are applicable that could be used for a bylaw relate to the building codes. And those, that's what we borrowed from in terms of specifying a minimum size of structural member that must be made out of wood, so as to differentiate from light frame construction. But there were no other policy precedents that we were able to draw from in that. And so we created this definition that is flexible but effective for our purposes.
Okay, yeah, so I wonder if there's a possibility to reduce the threshold that would provide more incentive for mass timber project.
So it's just a simple threshold in that if in order to determine that you're a mass timber building. So to my knowledge, there hasn't been an application that anyone would consider a mass timber building that wants to apply and use this that hasn't been able to because of the threshold. So that's another benefit of monitoring the implementation and reporting back on any further recommendations if needed.
Okay, thank you. So one more last question, just to follow up Councillor Claasen's question. So we have 8 mass timber projects in 5 years, so that's less than 2 per year. What is our target after this incentives?
That's a great question. We don't have a specific target. We would define success as seeing an increase in the rate of mass timber adoption. And I think what we'll see is pockets. There are certain types of construction, such as in office, for example, or in mid-rise office, that could be quite, where mass timber is already quite popular. And so we'll have to monitor the rate of uptake and see and watch for changes. But we've already had interest, and we expect that this will be well used.
Okay, so I guess we're going to do more evaluation and maybe review the policy later if it didn't generate any real incentive to the market, hey?
Yeah, I would say also in our consultation process with developers, we went through a process of coming to understand what would be effective and attractive. And we adjusted and attuned this to create something that, from what we were told, should be a usable and attractive incentive. And then, of course, we will, that's why we'll monitor the uptake and make further recommendations so that we can adjust. If it becomes very widespread, then we potentially don't need the incentive perpetually into the future and would look to phase that out. But we'll monitor and adjust as we go.
Thank you. I appreciate the answer. Thanks, Chair.
Great. Thanks, Councillor Joe. Councillor Kirby-Young.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And thanks for the report. I have a few questions. I'm looking at page 3 when it speaks about the additional height in district areas, and it indicates that the Director of Planning currently has discretion as a conditional use for 6% to accommodate, and so this would provide an additional 4%. The report indicates as an incentive for 10. So we're offering an additional 4.
Yes.
So I guess two-part question, which is, one, are we making the process, we're not offering 10% necessarily, we're just making it outright versus part of it being conditional? And that's the first part of the question. The next one is, when was this consultation done? Thinking about current economic conditions, it's not getting less expensive to build, and are we undershooting in terms of the incentives?
So I'll answer that, and then Charlene, correct me if I say anything wrong, please. But the first, we're changing from, it currently allows about 7 inches per floor, which converted is typically about 6%. We're converting from a 7 inches per floor where conditional to a 10% outright. So now it's not, it's just 10% outright. If you're building with mass timber under a district schedule, you can get an extra 10% height.
I understand that. So it's only an extra 4. So I'm saying, is that really making that much of a difference? Like, were people taking advantage of the conditional? Were they not because it was a more arduous process? Like, I'm just looking for how much.
Yes, a number of the projects that we've already received and gone through development permit process definitely took advantage of that conditional height increase. So this both increases that height increase, creating further flexibility, and makes the process simpler.
Okay, so the process is simpler, but we're doing 4%. Do you think we're undershooting? Like, when was the consultation and the engagement done?
So the consultation engagement was done over the, I would say, beginning in the summer of last year and continuing into the fall with multiple meetings with developers.
Okay, and do we feel that in the current economic environment that, are we now lagging behind? We're responding to the conditions at that time? Because we're also seeing them continue to get more difficult to build, is my point. It's getting more expensive.
What I would say is that this, I readily admit that this is not the biggest incentive of the 3 for sure. I would say the other 2 are definitely more attractive, especially the rezoning incentive where you can get 2 or 3 additional floors. This is the smaller of the 3, I would say, but still worthwhile.
Okay, so that leads me to my next question, thank you, is that we have one bylaw change to the package. This is procedural. Is the other one not a bylaw because it comes under rezoning to go for the higher incentive with the 3 stories?
That's correct. It's a rezoning policy. So, yeah.
Okay. And what's the current sweet spot around the number of stories that people are feeling comfortable with building? And again, I'm asking in terms of if part of this is stimulating moving this innovation, new technology forward, and we're trying to push it. Are we going 3 stories, going comfortable with what we know about the current technology, or are we actually trying to push beyond that to see if we can sustain taller, larger buildings?
So I would say that there's a couple sweet spots in the economics of construction. 6-story wood frame obviously is very its own kind of threshold. Above that, typically, the more the better. Because you can get into repeating floor plates, everyone's all there ready and building anyway. In mass timber construction, when you also layer in kind of current comfort and what you can build outright in the codes, the mid-rise is a really attractive sweet spot. So anywhere in this kind of 8 to 18 could be quite attractive. And at the same time, there may be applicants who are interested in going taller, and this could also help with that as well.
Okay, thank you. I'll leave it there. Appreciate that.
Thanks, Councillor Kirby-Young. Councillor Carr.
Yeah, thanks very much. Just a couple of questions. First question is around the fact that you intend to have pre-meetings with the applicants and city staff. And the report says that this is part of the reason for this is to kind of address issues around uncertainty and to decrease complication and that kind of thing. I'm wondering if that kind of a pre-meeting will also help reduce the time in terms of moving an application through the process.
I think that is definitely the hope, both in terms of creating applications that are cleaner and more readily and easily approvable, and also improving the connection between the development permit process and the building permit process to try and avoid any implications from meeting the building code that may have a knock-on effect back to the development permit process. This can help streamline the overall process and ideally speed up applications as well.
Great. Time is money in terms of the building industry, that's for sure. On page 4 of the report, it talks about who you consulted, developers, consultants, architects who provided feedback. Did you actually consult an initiative started by the city, the Zero Emissions Building Exchange, now part of ZEEC, the Metro Van Zero Emissions Innovation Center, as fora, which include all those, developers, etc. Like, did you actually formally consult with them?
I
ZEEC.
don't believe we formally had a direct meeting with Zeke. However, I would say we're in regular communication, both at the staff level and the management level. And so if they had interests or knowledge to pass on there or concerns, we would definitely, I believe, would have heard it.
Okay, yeah, maybe more discussion kind of how have a later date around that, because I think they're great fora for helping builders who are moving into this sector. A third question, you talked in the very beginning about some of the goals of moving in this direction from a holistic city point of view and reducing embodied carbon, increasing energy efficiency, decreasing noise, dust, traffic, etc. Did the issue of time come up at all? Are these buildings, because there is offsite construction, going to be are they going to be able to reduce the time taken in construction?
Absolutely. I think that's one of the main advantages of offsite construction, of which mass timber is a big part of. They can be building offsite. It means less time on site, less time in neighborhoods, and less disruption to neighborhoods overall, while potentially, and that's one of the primary cost savings comes from faster time on site. So reduced carrying charges for construction and having to cover loans and construction loans, things like that. Even every month counts from the finance side of things, as well as just needing less worker hours on site and being in and out from a construction site faster. That's both a cost savings and a time savings.
Okay, those are all good things to promote and to achieve. And just a final question regarding also the goals, which are like to reduce embodied carbon and increase energy efficiency. Are we planning on tracking those things in terms of our goals with the Climate Emergency Action Plan? So reporting back to council as we proceed, or as the city and developers proceed with more of these kinds of buildings, and making sure that we are tracking the advantages from our climate objectives point of view.
Absolutely. So tall mass timber applications and approved development permits is one of the indicators we're using under Big Move 5 of the Climate Emergency Action Plan. We're also exploring ways to track the reported carbon intensities from embodied carbon from permitting, as well as we further develop the indicators under the Climate Emergency Action Plan. We definitely look to track this. Yeah.
Excellent. All right. Those are my questions. Thanks so much.
Great. Thanks, Councillor Carr. That's it for questions. So we'll move to the second call for speakers. If there are any speakers for this item who wish to speak to council, please call toll-free 1-833-353-8610, followed by participant code 106-1445# before the close of the speakers list. The phone number will be posted on X and made available on the live stream. Any speakers in the council chamber, please come forward to the podium before the close of the speakers list. Speakers will have 5 minutes to make their comments and should limit their comments to the merits of the report being considered. So we'll now hear from the public, and our first speaker is Mark White. Hi, Mark.
Hi. Good evening, Acting Mayor and Councillors. I'm pleased to continue to live and volunteer on the traditional ancestral unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh Nations. At a fully attended OPIAC working session, I was asked unanimously to speak to this important initiative. Given the recent homeless count and concerns from senior serving organizations of the growing number of seniors who are homeless, living in cars, at the airport, in the streets, as well as a growing number of seniors who are on the verge of homelessness, there is a desperate need to rapidly build nonprofit seniors housing. The latest analysis OPIAC has received is that for every new built low end of market housing created, there is a loss of 4 deeply affordable housing units. Unfortunately, the City of Vancouver and its residents are losing the battle for affordability based on incomes of its residents. OPIAC would like to applaud staff on their work on this incredibly important initiative, given the high cost of construction, as well as the city goals to support accessibility and to address climate change. Mass timber construction can make a significant difference in each of these areas. The initiative is well timed with the forthcoming seniors housing strategy, and the use of mass timber and prefab construction method is an important tool that can eventually reduce construction and operating costs. We also see 2 additional opportunities for council and staff to consider. Economic business case. There is a potential economic opportunity and potential local advantage for the city to provide incentives to support developing the prefab industries to serve the City of Vancouver, or maybe in conjunction with Metro Vancouver. Age-friendly prefab design. We strongly recommend that staff continue to explore internationally about what's being done in the realm of mass timber construction and prefab that builds in accessibility and aging-in-place technologies. We encourage the City of Vancouver to work in close collaboration with nonprofit housing developers who can help lead age-friendly prefab innovation to support our growing older persons and elders population. OPIAC strongly supports this initiative as we see there is tremendous opportunity should mass timber become the way of the future. Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks very much, Mark, for coming in to speak tonight. We'll now move to our second speaker, Sean Keys, who's here in person. Hi, Sean.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Sean Keys, the Executive Director of Woodworks BC, also part of the Canadian Wood Council. First, I just want to thank you for the time and effort from the Planning Department to put forward this initiative, and we're in full support of these. So our work at Woodworks BC is as a technical support and market development initiative. You know, we work with providing education and direct project support to building owners, architects, engineers, developers, and are here to kind of support them as they take on these challenges of a new construction type. I also want to commend, there's some staff training noted in there in the policy, happy to play a role in helping the City of Vancouver with any of their needs there. By training, I spent about 10 years as a structural engineer before taking this role with the Canadian Wood Council, and I had the privilege of working at a firm that's designed and delivered many mass timber buildings all across North America. And there's a lot of expertise here in BC. 355 of the 830 mass timber buildings are built here in BC across Canada. And of those buildings that are in other regions of Canada, a lot of the expertise does reside here and has begun to move out of the BC region and We have many precedent-setting projects as well, beyond 6 stories. For about 10 years, Wood Innovation and Design Center has been performing well in Prince George. The project was completed in 2014. Brock Commons project at the University of British Columbia at 18 stories has been in operation since 2017. And to just address some of the questions around seismic concerns as a structural engineer, these types of buildings that we're talking, taller mass timber buildings, will actually are unlikely to use wood as a lateral system. They're actually more likely to use concrete or steel cores more commonly. And those will perform exactly the same in these types of buildings. And like Derek had mentioned previously, these will actually be lighter buildings than concrete. So the seismic forces will be lower. I just want to say, as we look to transition mass timber into more of the mainstream and go from public adoption to more private development, there are risks and challenges that developers are having to work through, and these types of incentives directly kind of attack those on the permitting timeframe as well as on the finance and return. And as we look to develop this market further, I think what's been proposed here is really fabulous. And, mass timber, I totally agree, a great option as we think of above 6 stories. We have these challenges as a community and as a province and a city of climate and housing. This is a form of construction that offers much lower embodied carbon while using local resources and supporting our forestry economy while still building dense cities that we need today. Alongside all the other community benefits, reduced time on site, reduced noise that come along with these types of buildings compared to other types of construction methods. So I just want to commend the City of Vancouver here and the Planning Department, what they've put forward as a bit of a roadmap for other municipalities. And we'd like to stand by and recommend these changes in other municipalities as well, and offer our support as an organization to developers, design and construction community, as well as City of Vancouver in any way that we see possible. So thank you.
Great, thanks, Sean. We'll now go to speaker 3, Graham Brewster. Good evening, Graham.
Good evening, acting mayors and councillor. My name is Graham Brewster, and I'm Director of Development at West Group Properties. I am a resident of Vancouver, and I'm here today in support of this proposal. At West Group, we take a long-term approach to community building, as evidenced by projects such as the River District here in Vancouver. We're also constantly striving to do better for our business, for our community, for our city, for our province, and for the planet. To that end, we set about learning all we could about mass timber as a potential better way to build buildings for the projects and for the planet. How did we do it? We surrounded ourselves with the best experienced people. What we learned immediately was to realize the benefits and succeed on a mass timber project, you must optimize from the very outset. To optimize, you really need to understand mass timber, its benefits and its challenges. To understand it, you need to experience it. To experience it, you need to do it in a project. So we did, with both feet. And today we've got 6 projects amounting to more than 600,000 square feet under various phases of development, including our District Energy Center at River District, under construction as we speak, and a future community center we'll be building together with and for the City of Vancouver at the heart of River District on the river. Most relevant to this conversation, we're also pursuing an 18-story hybrid mass timber mixed-use rental project. It's a lot of words to add into a description on a project, with an urgent care center at grade, adjacent to Town Center in River District. The thesis of this project has evolved from if it works as a mass timber project to how we can make it work as a mass timber project, and sharing those lessons along the way. This journey has taken us to sawmills in northern BC, to mass timber producers in Austria and Europe, and for meeting the teams of all the major tallwood projects around the world, to attending conferences in North America and Europe. What have we learned? We've learned that there are many brilliant and passionate people doing their utmost to make this typology work, including staff at the City of Vancouver here tonight, and that it has a future where the oft-touted benefits may be realized. But we're not there yet. We've learned that mass timber, even when designed with the best teams, still comes at a cost premium, as you heard about earlier this evening. For construction costs alone, without including the premiums on consultants and insurance, other key factors. With that, and speaking from a developer perspective, the real and perceived risks currently outweigh the benefits, and hence the slow uptake. That's the reality, but success elsewhere shows hope. that with more projects completed, more comfort grows in the marketplace. More trades are trained, more suppliers come online, and more projects are seen as demonstrably successful, which I believe is the ticket. To get more projects, however, there needs to be a reduction in cost or an increase in relative value to tip the scales to make it worthwhile. And while I think more can be done, I commend and support the work done by staff on this proposal as a definitive step in the right direction to the adding value part of the equation, which I hope will lead to the critically needed demonstration of successful first projects for others to emulate and repeat. Hearing all the comments and questions from councilors tonight, I fully agree that I'm also a nerd on the mass timber construction front, and I'm happy to hear you guys all are too. We've shared with staff that we remain sort of candidly open to share all that we've learned, to dive into things like balconies, ideal massing, incentives, heights. Will it see a boom? Where are the supply chain challenges? We absolutely remain committed and open to sharing those lessons learned with staff or a greater audience as required. We're really excited, and we think that mass timber has a real opportunity to build better buildings and potentially build them faster in the future, although we're not seeing that speed just yet. Thanks very much.
Great. Thanks, Graham. So this is the third and final call for speakers. If there are any speakers for this item who wish to speak to council, please call toll free at 1-833-353-8610, followed by participant code 106-14445#. Before the close of the speakers list, this phone number will be posted on X and made available on the live stream. Any speakers in the council chamber, please come forward to the podium if you're here. Okay, so not seeing anyone approach the podium, so we'll now take a 5-minute recess for additional speakers. We'll be back in 5 minutes. Okay, welcome back, everybody. Are there any speakers on the line?
There are no speakers on the line.
Okay, thanks very much. So seeing that there are no additional speakers, the speakers list is now closed. And seeing as there are no little or no comments received after 5 p.m., I'm now closing the receipt of public comments. Okay, so do staff have any closing comments? Nope. Okay, thank you. And does council have any questions for staff? Are people on the queue for questions for staff? Okay. Okay, so I'm just going to follow the script here. So did we receive any additional comments since the close of public comments, Leslie?
No.
Okay, thank you. Okay, council will now make its decision on the application. Councilor Dominato, you said you'd like to move the recommendations. Just turn your mic on.
Thank you. Yes, I'm prepared to move the recommendations.
Great, and do I have a seconder?
Second, Councillor Carr.
Okay, seconded by Councilor Carr. So moved by Councilor Dominato, seconded by Councilor Carr. Is there any debate?
Yeah, I'm prepared to.
You can go ahead, yeah.
And we could reset my timer, I believe.
Yes, we can do that for you.
Thanks.
Sorry, I'm just going to move us to the main queue. Sorry about that. So Councilor Dominato. Oh, one sec here. Go ahead, Councilor Dominato.
Thanks, Chair. And a couple of remarks. Just to say, staff, incredibly thrilled to see this come forward. For those of you who heard me speak in council last term, I brought several motions over the course of the Vancouver plan and Broadway plan and recently the Jericho lands to see us prioritize mass timber in our city. And so I'm really thrilled to see these incentives coming forward and the work that we're going to be doing to align with the provincial building code. And it's already been stated by the speakers, but it's abundantly clear there are significant benefits to using mass timber. It's been touched on the issue of housing. We all know that we need to add housing and the opportunity to reduce construction times by using mass timber. The climate and sustainability benefits in terms of lower embodied carbons, energy efficiency, and also increased fire safety with the use of mass timber and hybrid mass timber. I remember last term that we were talking about, well, we can only do 6-story construction, wood construction, and after that it's got to be concrete. So exciting to see some of the novel projects, and we recently approved one here in public hearing. And also, wood is a renewable resource in this province, and so again, a tie-in to the broader economy. And that's the other issue I wanted to talk and touch on this evening is when we initiate these measures, and it was touched on by both Sean and Graham earlier, is moving in this direction of mass timber actually has a significant benefit to the local and provincial economy. I was speaking at the Kofi conference a couple of years ago and talking about how, people don't think about Vancouver as being a forestry town, but in fact, we have the highest industry spend of almost $1 billion around companies and suppliers in the supply chain. And so when we go in this direction, which has got housing benefits, it's got climate benefits, we're also supporting our local economy. We've got companies like the Kolesnikovs in the Kootenays who have remodeled their entire enterprise to adapt to the market environment. Councillor Clausen and I recently toured B Collective's site around the work that they're doing for off-site construction. And so I think it's putting this in perspective is here we're trying to address considerations around accelerating housing development in our city to serve our residents as well as newcomers. We're trying to do it in a sustainable fashion, but we're part of a larger ecosystem here, and we're going to have impact on that both locally and provincially and potentially nationally. And I really appreciated the comments. I think it was Sean who referred to Vancouver, that this is a roadmap for other municipalities. Really appreciated that comment this evening because I think it is, and I think that we can carry these conversations forward from this public hearing to our other municipal governments and part of our work through UBCM and FCM. And so simply to reflect, I'm thrilled to see this come forward. I think it's a great opportunity. I think it's really showing leadership on the part of the city.
Great. Thanks, Councillor Dominato. Councillor Kirby-Young.
Yeah, thanks. I will be brief and not repeat because I know we have a lot of business ahead of us, but just to say that I'm fully supportive. And one thing that hasn't been said is I do appreciate taking out the conditional uses and making the process more defined and predictable, because that's one of the other things that we hear in terms of the increasing economic challenges is simplifying and streamlining our own processes. So I am happy to see that, and I will leave it there because I don't need to restate. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Councillor Kirby-Young. Councillor Carr.
Thanks so much, and thanks to staff for the work on this and the consultants that, or the individuals that you worked with in terms of consulting on these ideas. I really am also extremely excited. I like Councillor Dominato. I've brought forward motions in previous terms, mostly trying to see UBC and the Union of BC Municipalities as a whole really work on this issue, because from my point of view, having been involved in provincial politics prior, a value-added wood manufacturing industry has always been a goal within this province. And I love the fact that it's moving us towards that goal simultaneously towards our climate goals. So I think it's a win-win on many fronts. Really happy to see staff also looking at measures that would increase actually the consultation with applicants at the very early stages, which will help them decrease the time it takes in processing their applications, which of course is also a goal. Time is money in the industry, but really, this is actually going to be creating housing that is more resilient in terms of climate change, more productive in terms of reducing our own emissions. I love the fact that we're going to be tracking those reductions in terms of meeting our climate emergency action plan goals. So all in all, I think this is a real win for the city.
Great. Thanks, Councillor Carr. Councillor Fry.
Thanks, Chair. I'll keep it brief, only to just reflect, it was Graham who was making comments earlier about really experiencing mass wood and what it looks like. And it is quite inspiring. Like 5 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to vote on this because my wife's firm was one of the only architectural firms that was doing mass wood in the city. Now it's everywhere. And there's all sorts of architects and builders who are exploring mass wood. I had the privilege of visiting the Brock Commons site when it was being constructed. And it was remarkable to behold because it was clean and it was going up so fast and all the panels were assembled off-site and it was just, 2 concrete columns for the elevators and it was just bang, bang, bang. And I've never seen a cleaner construction site and fast. And I mean, that is the future of building, and it's great to see us embracing that here in the city of Vancouver. And as Councillor Dominato alluded, this is a great value add for the province of British Columbia and really building up sustainable jobs for our British Columbians. I only wish that we had a more robust manufacturing sector here in BC. I know that a lot of the materials still get imported from afar, which is mind-boggling to think in a province which is with as much wood as we have, that we would be importing European laminated timbers, but that's another story. Glad to see this moving ahead and hope to see a lot of success in the sector. So thanks for this. Happy to support.
Great. Thanks, Councillor Fry. Councillor Montague.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just a point of information. I know there was a number of yellow memos. I just want to make sure there was no yellow memo for this. I thought I saw one for this. No?
Not for this particular item.
I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Klassen.
Yeah, really, really quick. Just going to say, have been following the evolution of mass timber construction since it was originally proposed by the provincial government. Became an early fan of Michael Green, architect, and some of the amazing work he was doing and prototyping this. All I can just say is go, go, go. Let's get more of this done in this city and make Vancouver a capital for mass timber architecture.
Great. Thanks, Councillor Klassen. And I'm just going to make some closing remarks. Do I need to cede the chair to Deputy Mayor Klassen, correct? Oh, it's Montague. Sorry. Okay, Deputy Mayor Montague, I'd like to cede the chair to you, please. Okay, thanks. I'll be quick. This is great. Excellent work, staff, on these incentives for mass timber construction. I feel that they'll be really appealing to industry, and I think that the structure of the incentives is really great because it's going to create more housing, more density, and more height. And as well as several councillors have mentioned, it will help create the manufacturing capacity on the demand side for mass timber. So the more demand there is is for mass timber projects around Vancouver as a result of these incentives. I think the more manufacturing capacity we'll begin to see here in BC. So just want to say great job, and looking forward to our first projects under this new incentive framework. So thanks again. I'll now take the chair back. So that concludes our debate. We'll now go to the voting panel. Council, if you could please register your vote on the voting panel. Is Councillor Boyle online?
Yes, can I get a vote assist in favor?
Yes, for sure. Okay, that passes unanimously. Thanks, everybody. Just wait for the room to clear, and we'll move on to the next item in a minute. Okay, let's move on to item 2. CD1 rezoning 1002 to 1052 Seymour Street and 550 Nelson Street. Does any member of council wish to declare a conflict of interest on item 2? Okay, I'm not seeing any. So the clerk will now read the application and a summary of the correspondence received.
This is an application by Ani Development Corp. To rezone 1002 to 1052 Seymour Street and 550 Nelson Street from DD Downtown District to CD1 Comprehensive Development District. This is to change 12,548.7 square meters of residential floor area to commercial floor area, resulting in an increase of floor space ratio from 5.5 to 6.17. No form of development changes to the building are proposed. The General Manager of Planning, Urban Design, and Sustainability recommends approval subject to conditions set out in the summary and recommendation. The following correspondence has been received since referral to public hearing: 3 pieces of correspondence in support, 2 pieces of correspondence in opposition, and 2 pieces of correspondence regarding other aspects related to the application. And that represents all correspondence received up to 5 p.m. today.
Great, thank you. So this is the first call for speakers. Any speakers for this item who wish to speak to council, please call toll-free 1-833-353-8610, followed by participant code 106-1445# before the close of the speakers list. This phone number will be posted on X and made available on the live stream. There will also be an opportunity for new speakers and missed speakers to be added at the end of the registered speakers list. And since there are registered speakers for this item, I'm suggesting we hear the staff presentation, unless anyone else feels differently. So we do have staff ready here from Planning, Urban, and Sustainability to present the application. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Casey Peters, Assistant Director in the Rezoning Center. Before I begin, staff would like to advise that a rezoning memo is part of the agenda package. Purpose of the memo is to add a condition to secure community amenity contributions, a condition which was inadvertently missed in the referral report. The application at 1002 to 1052 Seymour Street and 550 Nelson Street was fully submitted by Ani Development in January 2022 and proposes a change of use from residential to hotel and an increase in density from 5.5 to 6.17 FSR. The 33,000 square foot site is located downtown at the corner of Seymour and Nelson Street. It's a single parcel currently developed with retail and services at grade, office in the podium, and strata residential use in the tower, with 2 levels operating as hotel, 1 at grade and 1 on the 6th floor. And there are 4 levels of underground parking. Subject site is zoned DD and located in the downtown south neighborhood in area L1. Surrounding zoning includes to the north and northeast CD1 369 and 515, with residential development, commercial at grade in a tower podium form, with heights around 200 to 300 feet. The areas to the south, east, and west are zoned DD area L1, which is primarily residential with commercial uses at grade. Area L1 is primarily residential and has a maximum commercial FSR of 1.0. Amenities in the area include Emily Barnes Park, Yaletown Park, and Rainbow Park, all within approximately 250 meters. Gathering Place and Roundhouse Community Centers, and the Vancouver Public Library Central Branch at Georgia and Robson Streets. Site is adjacent to frequent bus service along Granville Street and is in close proximity to multiple bikeways in the city's cycling network. The Granville Street planning process is underway and is expected to set policy direction for the area along Granville Street between Robson Street and Drake Street, shown here within the hatched area. As part of the approval of the Granville Street Planning Program, Council also endorsed the Granville Street Interim Rezoning Policy that allows consideration of both active proposals and rezoning applications that prioritize hotel uses. The IRP seeks to add hotel capacity in and around the Granville Entertainment District and allows for the consideration of rezoning applications where the proposal includes at least 75% of the total FSR as hotel use. The building was originally constructed 14 years ago as a mixed-use development with commercial uses at grade and in the podium and strata residential use in the tower. The proposal before you today is for a change of the use of 12,550 square meters or 135,000 square feet from residential use to commercial use for a hotel, which would occupy the whole tower and would add 168 hotel rooms to the downtown. Under the DD zoning, residential and commercial uses calculate exclusions differently, so the change of use would increase the FSR from 5.5 to 6.17. There are no proposed changes to the existing form of development. A rezoning information sign was installed on site, and an online comment forms were provided on the application's Shape Your City website. The website was accessed 654 times, and 17 comment forms were received from the public. Key areas of support include that the proposal addresses the city's need for hotel rooms, and key areas of concern include the removal of residential units from the downtown and increased traffic in the area. If approved, the project would provide a community amenity contribution of approximately $380,000 and approximately $630,000 of DCLs, for a total of just over $1 million in total contributions. The proposal is consistent with the Granville Street interim rezoning policy, and if approved, the project will contribute to an increase of 168 hotel rooms in the downtown, advancing the city's economic development objectives. Staff recommend the approval of this application, subject to the conditions of approval in Appendix B of the report. And as a reminder, action is required on a rezoning memo, which was provided to Council recommending an additional condition of approval to secure the community amenity contribution. And the applicant and staff team are available to answer any of your questions. Thank you.
Great, thanks very much. And just confirming, we do have the applicant here as well. So are there any questions from council to staff or the applicant team, noting this is the only opportunity for council to ask questions of the applicant? Councillor Kirby-Young, please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I have one question. It's just to sort of better understand, I understand the change of use, but just to better understand who's living there today and how it's used. Is it used more for typical rental residential or for longer term stay? Maybe I can track that to the applicant.
Thank you. Duncan Ladarchek, Chief of Staff at Ani Group. Just to answer your question, Councillor Kirby-Young, that the building as it stands today is a stratified residential building, but it's wholly owned by Ani Group, each individual unit, and we currently rent them out as furnished apartments, so for over 30 days plus. So it varying number of different residents throughout the year, comes and goes. So it's not a typical rental building.
Well, and that, I guess that's exactly my point, just zeroing in on this. This is not a typical kind of ongoing lease where you have long-term renters in the building. This has been more of an interim.
Correct. Yeah. We, for example, we'd have a lot of people from film and television who come and stay for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, depending on what film or TV is being produced, and then they leave. And then, so many different people cycle throughout the year.
Okay, and so this would be moving more to, if I can use the term, traditional hotel, so people coming in for a shorter few night stays?
Correct. We still plan to operate it as furnished suites, so it's more, we'll probably continue much of the same business model, but oftentimes when people come in and out of, say, you're there for 6 weeks, I'm there for 6 weeks, but there's 5 days in between, it remains empty. So given the lack of hotel capacity, particularly in and around Yaletown, we felt, given the policy was passed by council previously, that this might be a nice place to add a little bit of hotel capacity that still works within our business model.
Okay, and then just to be clear then, are you putting the full suite of rooms, the 168 into that, or will you be doing a mix?
The zoning is for the whole building to have that flexibility, but we would do it throughout. It would sort of depend on what each time of year is slightly different. So in the summer might be a bit higher on the hotel side and less on the medium term stay, and in the winter might be different, but really it would depend on what's going on in the market.
Okay, 2 other quick follow-ups if I can. What's motivating you to make the change?
I think we have similar properties like this in other markets. We operate levels in Chicago, Seattle, and Los Angeles, for example, and all of those properties have the same flexibility. We did get a rezoning on, or it was more of a change of use a few years ago on 20, or about 2 floors of seats, about 20 units, and found that having that flexibility is really helpful. And when there's compression and not a lot of hotel capacity in and around the Yaletown and downtown area, having that, extra capacity seemed logical as well for sort of adding to that hotel stock. So a bit of business opportunity, a bit of trying to help with the lack of hotel capacity in and around downtown and Yaletown in particular.
Okay, that's great. Thanks. I will leave it there. I might just ask a quick question for staff, and that is really if you can just reinforce for us the linkage into the Granville Street planning program, and is that just the direction that council gave around looking at new hotel applications while planning? Is that the situation or scenario here, just for clarity?
Councilor Kirby-Young, this is Desiree Jewett, the senior rezoning planner on the file. Yeah, that's correct. So the Granville Street interim rezoning policy is the enabling policy that that allows us to consider this application and support it.
Okay, that's great. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, not seeing any more questions. So this is the second call for speakers. If there are any speakers for this item who wish to speak to council, please call toll free 1-833-353-8610, followed by participant code 1061445# before the close of the speakers list. The phone number will be posted on X and made available on the live stream. Any speakers in the council chamber, please come forward to the podium before the close of the speakers list. And speakers will have 5 minutes to make their comments and should limit their comments to the merits of the report being considered. So we'll now hear from the public on this item. And we have, I believe, one speaker, who is Wayne Ryan. Hi, Wayne. Are you in the chamber here tonight? Oh, hi, Wayne. Please come to the podium. So you have up to 5 minutes, and please go ahead when you're ready.
Your Worship, honorable members of council, and enlisted staff, good evening. I'm here because I'm really concerned as to what is happening, right? And what's may happen, what's going to happen affects everyone in the Yaletown. They're not here today, right? And perhaps they have not put in opposition, but nonetheless, you need to be aware of what I'm about to say. Remember when the buildings on mainland and Hamilton, west of Nelson, were an eyesore? Buildings, old buildings, some of them abandoned warehouse or storage type buildings. Remember when council of the day had to decide whether to rezone that area and allow buildings that would allow occupants to block the views and change the character of that area. Of course, most of you do not remember, but some of you do, and I remember, right? At that time, the council of that date had to make a decision. Are they going to preserve that area, and the mainland area I'll refer to as the Yaletown area, right? Or are they going to allow rezoning to take place? And as a result of that rezoning, change the character of the area and allow for developments. And they did, in fact, rezone. But instead of rezoning in the manner of which it appears to me, council's being asked to do, right? They came up with rezoning that rather than changing the area, preserve the area. That's the restaurant area, right? And that's a booming area in Vancouver, right? Everybody knows about it worldwide. Tourists come here. That's where they head. I know because I live there and I see them, right? The rezoning came, and look what they did. They created that beautiful, the city of the council at that time created that beautiful area. They did that in face of marquee developers and owners who were sitting on these properties waiting for the opportunity to cash in to sell to a developer. And that's what the situation is in the area that we're talking about today. That's why it is as it is, right? It should be absolutely clear to all of you that it is the owner's responsibility, right? For the condition of the existing buildings, they chose simply to do nothing with the hope that in one day they would cash in. Let them know by adopting what the city council did that made Yaletown area such a success. Take a look back before you make the decisions and see what they did, because they made an eyesore, which is Granville today, and turned it into what it is today. So I submit that the same thing, if you consider it, the same thing can be said of the Granville area. It is ideally situated, it's ideally situated, and this is a precedent. That is, the previous council decisions way back when is a precedent for you to seriously look at and follow. That's my first concern. I don't want to see the character of South Granville change to developments like the hotel, which is just the beginning. You open the door and council will be faced one after another with applications of that nature. The second concern, and this is a concern that's shared by anyone who has a view.
Sorry, Wayne, you have like 5 seconds left, so I'm just going to...
of English Bay in particular.
Almost at time.
I've given you a photograph. The photographs will be available to those councillors not present. Unfortunately, a camera to me is snap.
Okay.
So the photographs really don't show anything.
Okay. Wayne,
the photograph in the daytime.
I'm happy to review those photos.
Area that is in between the two buildings on the north or in south, it looks as though that's not a big area or an important area.
Wayne, you are at time. Sorry, we only offer 5 minutes, but happy to look at those photographs during the break. You are at the 5-minute time limit, but I'm happy to come and take a look at those photographs after the break. I do live in the neighborhood, so I'd love to see the photos, but unfortunately, we are out of time. Sorry, Wayne, we just have to be fair to everybody, so I did give you some extra time. Okay. Thanks, Wayne. Thanks for coming in tonight. Okay, that is the conclusion of our speakers list. So we'll now do the third and final call for speakers. If there are any speakers for this item who wish to speak to council, please call toll-free 1-833-353-8610, followed by participant code 106-1445# before the close of the speakers list. The phone number will be posted on X and made available on the live stream. Any speakers in the council chamber, please come up to the podium. I'm assuming those are not speakers walking towards us, or are they? Nope. Okay, so we'll now take a 5-minute recess for any additional speakers, and we'll be back in 5 minutes. Okay, thanks everybody. That concludes our recess. I'll ask the clerk, do we have any speakers on the line?
We have no other speakers on the line.
Okay, and seeing there's no additional speakers, the speakers list is now closed. Seeing as there are little or no comments received after 5 p.m. today, I'll now close the receipt of public comments. Question for the applicant. Do you have any closing comments? Nope. Okay, thank you. And do staff have any closing comments?
Thank you. Just a reminder of the yellow memo for the additional condition for the CAC.
Okay, thank you for that reminder. So does council have any questions for staff? Are these questions for staff on the queue here? Yeah, okay, Councillor Montague.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just with regards to the last speaker, I just want to make sure that the public is very clear, that the speaker is very clear. I think I saw the applicant and speaker talking to each other just to clarify a few things, but this isn't a case of where anything's being built. This is a case of the building is already in place. This is simply a change of use. And I just want to make sure that that is crystal clear for
Could we
everyone.
just get staff to confirm that since we're in questions? On the microphone, if you don't mind. Sorry to make you get up.
Hello, this is Desiree Druitt, Senior Rezoning Planner on the file. Yeah, I confirm this is a change of use from residential to hotel. The building exists and there are no form of development changes being proposed.
Okay, thanks very much.
Okay, thanks, Chair. I just wanted to make sure that was very clear that the building already exists here. Thank you.
No, important to clarify. Thanks, Councillor Montague. Councillor Kirby-Young.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm not seeing anybody else in the queue, so I'm happy to move the recommendations with the yellow memo.
Sure. I'll just check first if we received any additional comments since the close of public comments.
We have received no further public comments.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Kirby-Young is moving the recommendations with the yellow memorandum entitled CD1 Rezoning 1002 to 1052 Seymour Street and 550 Nelson Street. Additional condition of rezoning approval for community amenity contributions dated on February 9th, 2024. And that's seconded by Councillor Montague. So Councillor Dominato, I see you on the queue. Do you have a question as well? Nope. Okay. Okay. Yes, we're just gonna first, so we did that. Okay, so yeah, we're gonna go to debate. Sorry, I'm just trying to follow the script here. So if you're wondering why I'm just going a little slow. So please go ahead, Councillor Kirby-Young.
Awesome. Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'm happy to move the recommendations and support this one. I think everybody is hearing more and more about the dire shortage of hotel rooms that we have in the city. And it's a big problem to tackle. I think the Destination Vancouver study quantified it at 10,000 rooms in the next generation, and that by 2026, demand will exceed supply in the peak summer months, which happens to be the same year that we are hosting FIFA. And so we need to build a lot more hotel capacity, but we also, and some of that is, as I said, it's going to be longer term. But I think council are taking steps to look at how to be more creative. We've been very inflexible with our hotel policy in terms of allowing it specifically in the downtown core. It has to be a standalone building. It's been fairly prescriptive, and I think that we're going to need to be more creative and flexible. And so with the Granville Street planning work, one of the directions from council was really a very clear vision that be revitalized as an entertainment district, honoring and recognizing its tradition, but looking at its potential for the future that puts positive uses such as commercial and office, people on the street during the day, and then really complementing evolving and modernized entertainment uses. And we're seeing the rec room going in there. We're seeing a change from nightclubs to pubs. We're seeing a number of other areas, but those uses are definitely more compatible. And I think council recognized that with hotel than they are traditionally with long-term residential. And so we also gave the direction that we wanted to see applications coming forward while planning to close that gap. So I think that's a good example of this one. I do like this in the sense that it's not displacing traditional rental tenants that are long-term tenants, because this has been sort of a longer term stay, but for finite periods of time. And so I think this definitely provides flexibility. So it's not necessarily a net 168 rooms into the capacity, but it is much a potential to utilize them much more effectively and to build capacity and to provide the extra rooms. I think we're going to see a couple of other options coming forward around hotels and for conversion as well. And I'm hopeful that they're going to start to chip away at that 10,000 room gap. This is 168, but we definitely need to do more of it. And it has huge benefits in terms of the economic drivers. And if we don't provide them, we see the pressure on our existing stock because people are going to come to town. They're not going to have anywhere to stay. And it becomes more tempting for people to Airbnb around the regulations. You see the prices of hotels go up just like when you don't have enough supply, just like you see our rental rates continuing to climb because we have such a record low vacancy rate. So there's a definite connection there. And a lot of people say to me, well, you know, you care about visitors, not locals, but one actually impacts the other. And it does impact locals if we don't have enough of them, not to mention that there's a provision of jobs, economic spending, because people come to town, it's not just heads and beds, they actually go to the local restaurants and they visit the local businesses. And so I think there's a real benefit to it. So I appreciate the work on bringing this one forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Kirby-Young. Okay, I'm not seeing anyone else on the queue, so we'll now call the vote. Clerks, if you could please take us to the voting panel, and Council, if you could please cast your vote on the voting panel.
Chair, could I have a photo assist in favor? It's Councillor Carr.
Yes, Councillor Carr, I'll do that for you. And is Councillor Belay online? Okay, so that passes unanimously. And that concludes item 2. Thanks very much. Okay, we'll now move to item 3, CD1 rezonings, 5392, 5472 Manson Street, and 5250 to 5270 Ash Street, and 595 West 37th Avenue. Does any member of council wish to declare a conflict of interest on item 3? Okay, I'm not seeing any. So the clerk will now read the application and a summary of correspondence received.
This is an application by Peterson Group to rezone 2 non-contiguous sites at 5392 to 5472 Manson Street, referred to as the Manson Street site, and as well as 5250 to 5270 Ash Street and 595 West 37th Avenue, referred to as the Ash Street site. This is to rezone from R11 Residential Inclusive District to CD1 Comprehensive Development District, and to permit the development of 2 18-story buildings with 248 strata titled residential units on the Manson Street site, and a 6-story residential building with approximately 77 social housing units on the Ash Street site. A floor space ratio of 5.62 and a height of 59.9 meters for the Manson Street site, and a FSR of 3.10 and a height of 21.5 meters for the Ash Street site, with additional height for a rooftop amenity or mechanical appurtenances are proposed. The General Manager of Planning, Urban Design and Sustainability recommends approval subject to conditions set out in the summary and recommendations. The following correspondence has been received since referral to public hearing, 1 piece of correspondence in support, and 1 piece of correspondence regarding other aspects related to the application. This represents all correspondence received up to 5 p.m. today.
Great, thanks very much. So this is the first call for speakers. Any speakers for this item who wish to speak to council, please call toll-free 1-833-353-8610, followed by participant code 106-1445# before the close of the speakers list. And this phone number will be posted on X and available on the live stream. There will be an opportunity for new speakers and missed speakers to be added at the end of the registered speakers list. But since there are no registered speakers, I'd like to suggest we waive the presentation. Is that why you're on the queue, Councillor Montague?
Thank you.
Okay. Can I get a seconder to waive the presentation? Seconded by Councillor Fry. Any debate on that? Not seen any. All those in favor say yay. Any opposed say nay. So that carries. Okay, so we will waive the presentation. Just want to check if the applicant team is here to speak to the application. They are. Perfect. Okay, are there any questions from council to staff for the applicant team, noting this is the only opportunity for council to ask questions of the applicant? Okay, I'm not seeing any questions on the queue, so I'll do the second call for speakers. If there are any speakers for this item who wish to speak to council, please call toll-free 1-833-353-8610, followed by participant code 106-1445# before the close of the speakers list. The phone number will be posted on X and made available on the live stream. Any speakers in the council chamber, please come forward to the podium before the close of the speakers list. Speakers will have 5 minutes to make their comments and should limit their comments to the merits of the report being considered. Do we have any additional speakers, clerks?
No additional speakers.
Okay, so I'll now do a third call for speakers. The third and final call. So if there are any speakers for this item who wish to speak to council, please call toll-free 1-833-353-8610, followed by participant code 1061445# for the close of the speakers list. This phone number will be also posted on X and made available on the live stream. Any speakers in the council chamber, please come forward to the podium. Okay, I'm not seeing anybody. So we will now take a 5-minute recess for any additional speakers. Okay, welcome back, everybody. Do we have any additional speakers?
There are no speakers on the line.
Okay, thank you. Seeing as there are no additional speakers, the speakers list is now closed, and seeing as there are little or no comments received after 5 p.m., I'll now close the receipt of public comments. Does the applicant have any closing comments? Nope. Okay. And do staff have any closing comments? No. Okay. Does council have any questions for staff? Not seen any. Clerk, did we receive any additional comments since the close of public comments?
We did not.
Okay, thank you. So council will now make its decision on the application. Do we have a mover for the recommendation? Anyone would like to move the recommendation?
So moved, Chair.
Okay. Councillor Montague, seconded by Councillor Klassen. Is there any debate? Not seeing any debate. So we'll now go to the voting panel. Clerks, if you could please take us to the voting panel, and council, if you could please register your vote on the voting panel. Okay, that passes unanimously. Okay, that was our last item for the evening, so we need a motion to adjourn. Okay, don't all speak up at once. So that was moved by Councillor Kirby-Young, seconded by Councillor Dominato. All in favor? Yeah, great. No one opposed, I'm sure. Carried. Okay, meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Chair. Good job.